Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 19th and tonight's classic is Vertigo. Vertigo is considered by many to be Alfred Hitchcock's opus, and it has been called the greatest movie ever made, even surpassing Citizen Kane. However, as it often is the case with older movies, people look at it as to how good it was back then instead of how good it stays as time progresses. I watched it today to see if it was really as good as I heard it was. It wasn't, but I thought it was okay. I'm giving Vertigo a 7 out of 10. The movie begins with a chase scene of a criminal running from two policemen, and one of them, slips and falls and ends up, hanging from the gutter of a tall building, and when the other one tries to save him, he falls to his death and lands on the concrete. This caused the surviving police officer to develop extreme acrophobia, fear of heights, and get dizzy and have vertigo whenever he looks down when he's high up. That cop, played by Jimmy Stewart, retires in the force and is just pretty much settled for living a nice, comfortable bachelor life, but one of his friends has a job for him. Apparently his wife is acting very strangely, and he asks the detective, named John, to tail her and see what's going on. Probably the best thing I can say about Vertigo is that it is a very, very pretty movie. The sets are really good, I love the colors, the composition, there was effort put into every single scene to make it look great. Jimmy Stewart is also his normal, likable self and turns in a very good performance as John. While branded as a psychological thriller, and there are aspects of that in Vertigo, I would call it more of a mystery movie than anything else. But that being said, the mystery was very good and it kept me invested. I think that the only real problem with Vertigo, to me at least, was the pacing. I feel like this movie went on a little too long, it lingered in a few places where it shouldn't have, and it didn't keep the story going in the way that would have, in my opinion, suited the suspense better. But that's not to say that there weren't things to keep me at least a little bit more interested along the way. One of the things that I really liked about this movie is the conversations between John's character and another one named Midge. I have no idea how that's short for Margaret, but that's what he calls her. And I really like the banter between the two of them. They're not a couple, they're just friends, but I really do believe that these two characters are friends and know each other. They're both good, likable characters, and I liked watching them work off each other. Some Hitchcock movies have this one really big selling point in the technical department, like Rear Window, the entire movie takes place in one room, or Rope, where everything is in long takes and the movie happens in real time. Vertigo doesn't really have anything that big, but supposedly it pioneered the dolly zoom effect. Basically, it's focusing on a shot and then panning backwards, moving the camera physically backwards while zooming in. The two effects sort of cancel each other out, and it stretches and squishes the depth of field in a very strange way. And this is used to sort of get across the fear of heights. When he looks down, the effect happens. It's very simple, but very effective to get sort of that fear across. I don't think it's even close to being the greatest movie ever made, but for what it is, I think that Vertigo holds up pretty well. If you're interested, I would say check it out. Okay, there are a lot of spoilers in this movie, so let's get down to it. The idea is that the man who hired John, his name is Gavin, his wife is apparently getting possessed by one of her ancestors. And the idea is that that ancestor killed herself at 26, and it's making her want to kill herself. There's a lot of moments of the wife, Madeline, sort of going away and being replaced with somebody else and then coming back. John and Madeline end up spending a lot of time together and through over the course of the movie fall in love with each other, even though I really feel like they didn't even mention once, Madeline didn't say, I shouldn't do this, I'm married, because she was. They didn't even mention it once, which I feel like they should have, but whatever. And it gets to the point where they go to a certain church with a really high bell tower, and Madeline goes up the stairs to jump off and kill herself, and John is trying to follow her, but he keeps getting dizzy and vertigo because he's high up and he can't make it to the top, and then she jumps off and dies. But that's not the end of the movie, that's just the end of the second act. It cuts to, I think they imply around a year later, where he finds a woman who looks just like how he remembered Madeline looking. And it's revealed that the entire thing, the whole possession by an ancestor, the death of Madeline, that was all a setup by Gavin to kill his wife. Because the wife was very rich and he inherited some money from her. And the woman that John found was actually the person who was playing Madeline in this ruse. Of course, he doesn't know this. He's just interested in this girl because she looks just like the woman that he fell in love with. And as things continued, eventually he figures out, because she was wearing a piece of jewelry that only Madeline would have had. But that's complicated even further by the fact that the doppelganger named Judy actually really did fall in love with John, and she feels really guilty about the whole thing, and she wants him to actually love her for her, not just the fictional person that was created. They go back to that church where Madeline supposedly killed herself, but it turns out she was just thrown off, and he confronts her about it, and I don't know exactly what they were going with. I think it was John wanting to sort of face this and do this over again. So he does make it to the very top of the tower, dragging her with him. And I think they kind of reconcile with each other, sort of I think he's on his way to forgiving her, but then somebody comes up. And one of the things that was done a lot in the movie was that after Madeline died, there was a John kept seeing every woman's briefly looked like Madeline to him. And it's somebody comes up to the tower and she says something, and the voice sounds similar to the voice of Madeline, the woman who died. And I think the implication is that Judy absolutely freaks out, thinking that it was a ghost coming back to punish her, and then she jumps off the tower too. There are 3 big moments in the movie where Jimmy watches somebody fall to their death. The first one is what started out the movie, watching his partner die. The one in the middle was watching Madeline supposedly kill herself. And at the very end is watching Judy die. And then the movie just stops. There's no wrap-up, no conclusion, no real ending to speak of. It just stops right there. As a story, Vertigo isn't really that special, but there are other things in the movie, like just the beautiful aesthetics of it, some of the acting, that actually does bump it up as to being more than the sum of its parts. It's not perfect, it's not the greatest movie ever made, but considering how old it is, it's kind of impressive to me that it holds up as well as it does. And that said, I'll see you tomorrow.